Okay, welcome. So we are doing the abridged version of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 87, and we are in the middle of Halacha Gimel number 3. We're in the middle. So we said that horses shouldn't go out wearing a saddle. Donkeys can. Right? We said that donkeys get cold and they need it for the warmth. We did say, though, that last time we left it, that we said that if you tied the saddle on the donkey before Shabbos, that's fine. And it can go out on Shabbos because it's like a garment for the donkey. If it didn't have it on before Shabbos, well, you can't tie it on Shabbos because we can't tie the knots. We can't tie a knot that will be tight enough to keep it on. And if it's untied, we have a concern that as this donkey wears this untied saddle bag type thing in the public domain, in the Rosh Hashanah, then it could fall off, and you'll end up carrying this saddlebag. That was where we left off yesterday, last week, should say. We're up to Va'ach. We're in the middle, like almost smack bang in the middle of Gimel of number 3. We said Va'ach k'shechamo b'chotzer. But if the donkey is only in the courtyard, then mutar seisalav from adas. You can put the saddlebag on it, saddle pack, even though it's not tied. It's sinner because of the cold. You just have to be careful that the donkey is not going to go outside into the public domain. And I know this is very relevant to most people here. I'm sure everyone has a donkey at home, but a similar idea. Those who have dogs and they put like something on it for warmth. Al-sus, but a horse. You can't put the saddle pack on it at all. Unless it's a really cold weather, and so cold that even the horse could get harmed. Similarly with a horse in summer, where there's a lot of flies and they annoy the horse. You can put the saddle pack on the horse, as long as you're careful that you don't lean on the animal when you put this, when you cover it up with the saddle pack. Now to take off a saddle pack, so it was on before Shabbos, and you want to take it off, also you're not allowed to, because it doesn't bother the animal if you leave it there, and therefore we're just going to leave it on. Right, so that's the laws of saddling donkeys and horses. You may spend Shabbos on a farm somewhere. It could be relevant. Number 4. Your animals can't go out wearing a bell. Even though it's plugged and it doesn't ring, right? There's no ding-a-ling as the animal walks. And this is even if you're in a city that has an eruv. So there's no problem with the animal carrying. You still can't wear the bell. I saw the Seis boy. It can't wear the bell because it looks like it's being taken to the market. So this is a rabbinical decree that it looks like you're doing business on Shabbos, because normally animals only had the fancy bells and things if they went off to the auctions. But in the courtyard, in other words, in your own yard, your own property, if the animal wants to wear the bell, or you want the animal to wear the bell, no problem. If it's plugged, so it doesn't ring. But if it's not plugged, and Makashkesh, and therefore it ding-a-lings, then a fila b'chotza surli yoisaleho. Even in the courtyard, you can't have it. So some people put these bells on the collars of dogs and cats. So it's the same thing. So if the bell is going to actually make sound, then we can't have it on our animals. Yes.
In the book, I see it says asur letzet bezug. What is that?
A bell.
A belt?
Bell.
Oh, a bell.
Yeah.
Oh, two bells. Zug is two.
It often means a pair. It's a slightly different word here, I think, because you got the outer piece and the inner piece in the bell.
Oh.
That's where it gets its name from. Yeah. So there's something, people have cats and dogs, the same thing. They can't wear the collars that have the little bells that ring as they go. Okay.
So even if it is an Eruv, you're not allowed to let them out, or what?
Yeah, they can't. Well, if there's an Eruv, they can't wear a bell. So if there's an Eruv, they can wear a plugged up bell, so it doesn't ring. It's just the decoration. No, sorry. In public, they can never wear a bell, whether it works or not. In your yard or your property, then animals can wear a bell that doesn't ring.
Oh, okay.
So,
on Shabbat.
Yes. And if it rings, then they can't even wear it in your property. Okay. So, hey, number 5. Now, although it's a horse, we'll see can also be relevant to us as well, if you don't own a horse. You can lead a horse with the straps, like with the reins, the straps on the bridle. As long as you hold the end of the rein, so it doesn't hang out of your hand. So the space between your hand and the horse is not more than a tefach. And remind the tefach is the fist. Likewise, it can't hang, the reins can't hang down close to the ground, within a tefach of the ground. Then the chevel orach harbe, so it's a very long. You have to wrap it around the horse's neck. Okay, so if someone has a dog, and they're going to take their dog for a walk, right? The dog's, although pets are muksa, animals are muksa on Shabbos, but the dog, if they're trained, and they need to go to the bathroom, so you have to take them out for the walk. Otherwise, it's sar balachayim. It's cruelty to animals. So the same thing. So if you can have a leash, it's the same halacha, but you have to hold the leash. It can't hang, can't be within a tefach of the ground, and you have to have not more. There can't be more than a tefach of leash between your hand and the dog, which is probably not the regular way of leading. And the reason for this is it has to be, again, obvious that we're leading the animal. We're doing this for leading the animal. We're not taking it off to the market. Okay. Vav. Now this can be, although again we're talking about animal, we're taking, it's talking about cows and horses, but could be the same as someone's dog set, or they on more than one dog. They take them out together on the walk. Now, if you have a situation where you're taking two or more animals and they're tied to each other, so what happens is you pull the front animal, and that front animal pulls along all the other ones that are tied to it. So they're tied, one behind the other. So if you do that, also last days came to Shabbos. You can't do that on Shabbos, because when you pull like a team of animals like that, again, it looks like you're taking them to the marketplace. That's how animals will be, multiple animals will be taken. I feel a bit and this is even in a city that has an Erev, you still can't pull the animals like that, because it's not a carrying problem. It's a problem of looking like you're doing business on Shabbos. But you can have multiple leashes if they're all on their own independent leash. You can have multiple leashes in your hand. As long as you follows the conditions that we had in the previous chapter, that the leash doesn't hang within a tefach of the ground, and your hand is not more than a tefach from the animal. So you could take two dogs together, each on their own leash, but not one dog pulling another dog. Okay. All right. Questions, comments?
Rabbi.
You told us, I think you're muted.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Question on 5 again. So the leash cannot be more than one tefach from the animal.
Yes, so your hand needs to be there can be a tefach in between, but not more than a tefach between your hand and, say, the collar. So you're holding the collar very, reasonably close. The leash, right, relatively close.
And then it talks about the fact that the strap, which is between your hand and the animal, should not reach within a tefach of the ground.
Yes.
So if you're holding it to a tefach to the animal, the horse.
Yeah, so, maybe you sat down or you bend over to pick something up. You have to make sure it still doesn't go within tefach on the ground.
Rabbi?
Yes.
If you take a dog out on Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
And he poops, can you pick it up and remove it?
No.
And discard it? It has to stay there?
Because that is muksa. That's real. That's as muksa as it gets.
Even though it's contaminating and somebody could slip on it?
Well, I don't think contaminating is the problem. I mean, the only half question you have is if you're going to get fined and different things. But
hey, it's Nightwood, right?
Yeah, well, it's not just that. I mean, it's just it has no purpose on Shabbos. Even if it had a purpose, it doesn't help. Here we have it's he's stuck. The only time you could perhaps move it and outside really wouldn't be the case would be, let's say, if an animal has or even a person, a child, something has an accident in the house. And therefore, it's making the atmosphere of the house revolting. So, you can't pick it up directly. You still have to move with something indirectly, but, then you can move it. But if it's outside, I know the city councils don't like it, but...
Neighbors don't like it.
Yeah. I saw a comic once of a person cleaning up after his dog like that. And the dog saying, "No, not again. You're better than that." No, that's so Shabbos we have to leave it, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. Okay, Zayin, number 7. So chickens can't go out with these strings tied on them for identification. So seemingly, when everyone had chickens, people used to put different colored strings and things on their chicken's foot so they could tell whose chicken was whose. So they can't go into the public domain wearing these on Shabbos. Or they also can't wear these, again, they used to tie something on their feet so they didn't jump on different things around the house and break them. But if you've tied the chicken's feet so they can't run away, likewise horses that you tie their front legs together. Now, not together that they don't have, workable front legs, but they can't take large strides. So they limited the strides. They would tie it so it can't escape. So it can't run away. Mutter, that's allowed. What you can't do though with the horse is you can't tie a front leg to a back leg. That's akud means tying the front leg to the back leg. And you also can't tie the back legs in a way that they're facing up. One of the legs is up. Because if you do either of these two things, it can only walk on 3 legs. And that we can't do. That's what I do with Shabbos. Even during the weekdays, we're not allowed to tie the animals up, horse up like that. Because this causes suffering to the animal. The tie in a way they can only walk on 3 legs. But to tie, so this again would apply to any animal. If you tie it in a way that limits its strides, so it can't run quickly, but not in a way that hurts it, then you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to, it can go out like that on Shabbos. Okay. All right. Test number 8. You have a non-Jewish servant, and he's taking the animals, he's leading them to drink the water. And he rides the animal as he takes them to the water. You don't have to stop him. Why? The fact that we can't ride an animal on Shabbos is not because of a load on an animal, right? We started off the chapter saying this, we have to rest the animals as well, so we can't put a load on them. Person is not a load. Why? Because a living creature, which includes people, that you hold your own weight to a certain extent. So even sitting on the animal, a person, because of the way they balance and they hold their own weight to an extent. So therefore, it's only rabbinic that we don't ride an animal. And that's a prohibition on the person. This is a prohibition on the person, not on the animal. So it's not that the prohibition is not that our animal can't have a person ride on it. The prohibition is we can't ride on the animal. So therefore, a Jew is forbidden to ride an animal on Shabbos. The goy, and for the non-Jew, he doesn't have any prohibition to ride an animal on Shabbos, and the animal doesn't have a prohibition to have a person on it on Shabbos. So therefore, he can ride the animal if he's taking it somewhere. But he can even put a saddle or a blanket to ride with. because these things become nullified, they become like accessories. So they're subordinate to the rider. But he can't put anything else on the animal. So he can't start putting his bags or saddlebags or his lunch. He can't have it carry anything because the animal, a Jew's animal can't carry a load on Shabbos, but it can, but the non-Jew can ride it. Okay. Since most of us don't have horses and live in the cities and various things, I'm just going to sort of go through reasonably quickly, but therefore, if anyone has a question, please stop and ask, and don't be shy.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
I don't own a pet, but I'm just wondering, there are certain laws that we do in order to keep peace between Jews and non-Jews.
Yeah.
And if religious Jews start walking around and having their dog do their business all over the neighborhood, that may raise anti-Semitism, and they'll say, look, all other normal people are caring for their dog's poo-poo, and all of a sudden these religious Jews don't seem to care whether their dog is making a mess, and they're not aware that it's Shabbos. So I
hear. I mean, maybe a reason not to have a dog, and hopefully it's only one day a week. It'll be discreet enough, people won't notice.
Or have somebody else walk it, maybe.
That's another possibility. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't help us in this case. Okay, test number 9.
My father tells me that this inyan of not having dogs is really only the current American generation. In Europe, he said, in Lezhensk, you had to have dogs. Everybody had dogs. He says, in fact, when the Nazis invaded, they had to kill their 3 dogs. My grandfather had 3 dogs. They had to kill the dogs when the Nazis arrived because they were afraid that the Shchenim, the neighbors, were going to let the Nazis know the names of the dogs. It was Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini were the 3 dogs they had. So it wasn't an unusual thing to have a dog for Shabbos.
Yeah, I mean, well, yes and no. This not having dogs is already Talmudic times. That generally because a lot of people are afraid of dogs, and now sometimes you walk past the fence and all of a sudden the dog starts barking, you jump. So there were instances where people had miscarriages and things like that.
Right.
Nevertheless, there have been times in history where people with their businesses, they needed watchdogs. I think till recent times, people didn't really have dogs purely as pets like we have today. It was more, people had a farm. You had a dog, kept the foxes away from the chickens. It may have also been pet-like, and you part of the family as some dogs are, but it was really there initially for another purpose. So there's definitely been times in history where many Jews had dogs, and that's why we. Yeah. All right. Test number 9. Now you're allowed to have a non-Jew milk animals on Shabbos. Now, as we discussed quite a while ago, the things that we can't do on Shabbos, the 39 malachas, these 39 techniques, they are the 39 techniques that we used to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. So one of them is when we take the wheat out of the husk. So we take the edible things out of its encasing. So milking is the same idea. So the milk is enclosed. While it's enclosed, we can't consume it. And when we take it out, and now we can consume it. So theoretically, we're not allowed to milk an animal on Shabbos. Now, what we're going to say, though, is that because the animal will suffer if we don't milk it, therefore we need to milk it in order that the animal shouldn't suffer. The question is, can we use the milk? And this is what we're going to discuss now. So we can ask a non-Jew to milk the cow. The shum sar balachayim. This is because if the cow or goat or sheep, whatever it is, whatever animal, it's not milked, it's going to suffer. You're torturing the animal. Right? The milk causes them pain if they can't get it out. Now, if the non-Jew milked it, on that day, meaning for the rest of Shabbos, this milk is muksa, and it can't be handled. But the non-Jew should place it in a safe place, and therefore, so you could use it after Shabbos. Now, a Jew probably needs to watch the milking, but it's a separate issue. Likewise, you can say to the non-Jew, let's before we do that halachah. So this is what we're going to do now. If there's no non-Jew available, you can milk the animal yourself, but then you can't use the milk. It has to go to waste. So what they used to do in Israel, in the kibbutzim, the frum ones, the religious ones at least, is they used to milk the cows on Shabbos, and it went down the drain. So they came up with a machine, but the way it works is like this. The cows generally they get in their routine and they just walk into their pens. And in the pens, they attach the machine to the udders of the cows. And then sometime after that, the machine went on a timer. So it was so the Jew didn't actually milk the animal, even though they attached it. So they can't turn on the machine. Anyway, can't turn the machine for Shabbos, but also then they would be milking it directly, or at least indirectly. Here they didn't milk it at all. They just attached the bits to the udders, and then it went into storage, and then they were able to deal with it after Shabbos. Yes, Ben.
So we can give a goy to do the milking, but can we use the milk that he's doing on Shabbat?
So we can use it after Shabbos.
After.
Yeah. Now we still have the kashrus issue. A Jew needs to supervise the milking. Let's presume that someone was watching. But in respect to Shabbos, you can't use it on Shabbos but we can use it after Shabbos. Okay. The next halacha in this chapter, so they used to force feed geese. It's illegal in most countries today, but goose liver was a delicacy, and if they force fed it, they used to get these giant livers, and so they sort of kept the animals, the geese, like in a little box, and they just literally force fed it, like shoved food down its throat.
Ungestuffte Gans.
That's it. And if you do that regularly, it gets to a point where the goose cannot eat on its own anymore. So it doesn't help, regular animals, you can't feed animals, but let's say regular chickens or geese, you throw down the food on the ground and you walk away and they'll eat themselves. But these geese, they can't eat independently anymore. So likewise, you can ask a non-Jew, that they can force feed these geese once a day, because it's the animal can't eat on its own, so it's going to make the animal suffer if you don't feed it for a whole day. Could be the force feeding is also making the animal suffering, but once it's in the force feeding mode, you got to keep doing it. Okay. Yud, number 10. You can't Now, again, we said at the beginning of the chapter that our animals have to rest as well. So we can't lend or rent out our animal to a non-Jew if it's going to work it on Shabbos, right? You could sell it, and then it becomes the non-Jews. But while it's ours, we can't have our animal work on Shabbos. So you can't lend it or rent it to a non-Jew, unless you make a condition that is going to return it before Shabbos. Now, if it happens that they didn't return it, you lent it, you told them you have to return it before Shabbos, and he didn't keep his word, and he's got it on Shabbos. So Yisrael Kodim Shabbos, the Jew should make the animal ownerless, should give up his ownership in the animal before Shabbos. He doesn't have to tell anyone he's done it. It was just between him and himself. Doesn't have to put up a sign. In order to rescue himself from transgressing Shabbos. But this is only after the fact. This is only if you made the condition they have to return the animal for Shabbos, and they did it. So then you can give up ownership. But you can't. That can't be how you rely. You can't do that in the first place. You can't say, here I'm renting it out for 2 weeks, and then when it comes Shabbos, you make it ownerless. This is only if you get stuck. Okay. Yud Aleph, number 11. Although we're going to speak about, again, farm animals, this is relevant to anyone who has pets. A person can't measure out the barley that he puts in front of his animals. He just does like a rough estimate. So this is the same thing, let's say, you have a dog or a cat. So if you feed it one can, you just open the can, you pour it out, is not a problem. But let's say some of the dry food, people have these scoops, and maybe they're giving an exact amount. So you can't give an exact amount. We can't measure things on Shabbos or Yom Tov. But you just do a rough, close enough. Okay. Yud Beis 12. A good shachas. So you have a bundle of hay or other food, and it's not tied up. Right? It's untied. Now, it's you can put it. It doesn't have a knot that's a permanent knot. It might have a little bow or something, but it's not tied up permanently. You can untie it, put it in front of the animal. If you're feeding them food that's very hard, it's too hard. In this case, talking about different types of like pumpkins, or things that they put in front of certain animals. But whatever animal you have, any pet you have, if the food is too hard for the animal to bite it or to break it up, you're allowed to cut it up. This is, of course, if it's like a pumpkin or something that you picked it before Shabbos. But if it's soft and the animal can eat it as is, even if they don't normally, but they could, then also the chascham, then you can't cut it up. You have to put the whole piece there and, and let the animal eat it as is. Okay. Yud Gimel 13. You can put your animal on growing grass in order to eat it. The grass, that is, right? So, I don't know how many people have cows, but I have, we have some pet chickens at home, and we could shoo them onto the area where the grass is. And even though grass is growing and they're going to eat it, and we want them to eat it, that's not a problem on Shabbos. Why? Because the fact that it's pulling up the grass, it's uprooting the grass, this is not a malacha, this is not work, it's not a burden for the animal. It's its pleasure. Right? So that's why it's although we have a mitzvah to rest our animal, that's not like carrying burdens, but to let it enjoy itself, you're allowed. But if it's grass that was cut by a non-Jew on Shabbos, hay muksim, so now they're muksim. Now the non-Jew cut hay, bundled it up, he's brought it around your house. Since this was done on Shabbos, it's muksa. So since it's muksa, so obviously you can't touch it. You can't even bring the animal and put the animal in front of it because it's muksa. So unless there's nothing else for the animal to eat, there's literally nothing for the animal to eat except for what was brought before Shabbos, then again, you can't handle it, but you can bring the animal to the food. Why do we relax the muksa? Because if the animal starves for the day, this is cruelty to animals, make the animals suffer. And we have a mitzvah to ensure that animals don't suffer. Likewise, if there's nothing for the animal to drink. Okay, so today, we have taps and hoses and faucets. It's much easier to bring water. But, on a property or something, a farm, you're allowed to say to a non-Jew, right? You can ask him to go bring water from a well or a river or something that's a Carmelis. So even though rabbinically we can't carry from a Carmelis to the private property, the Carmelis is similar to the public domain but missing some of the ingredients. But here, since the animal is going to be suffering if we don't bring it water, the decree against carrying from a Carmelis was not made in these circumstances. Okay. Yudalad, 14. So like I said, because most people don't have farm animals, I'm just going to sort of keep going at a reasonable pace, but if anyone has any questions, don't feel shy to ask. Okay, 14. You shouldn't hang a bag or some type of vessel over the animal with food in it. They used to have a feed bag and the animal could eat as they're walking. You can't do that. Right? Because since it's only for the animal's comfort, so it doesn't have to bend its neck. In other words, it's not essential. It's not like actually feeding the animal. You can drop the food on the floor. To put the food bag is just for convenience. It's not a necessity. And therefore, it's handling the animal unnecessarily. And the animals are generally muks on Shabbos. And it's forbidden to exert ourselves on Shabbos solely for the convenience of an animal. So if it's for the animal's well-being, it needs food, and we can't, there's the prohibition of Sar Bal Chaim of making animals suffer. So then we're allowed to do what we need to defeat it. But just for extra convenience, we can't exert ourselves on Shabbos. So that's regular animals. Avol a golem is yochim, but calves or colts. The Savarim Kotza, their necks are still shorter. And it's difficult for them to eat directly from the ground. That if you're in a courtyard, a fenced-in area, then you can put this feed bag around their neck for them to eat on Shabbos. But they can't wear it out to the public domain on Shabbos.
You think we can wait?
Yeah.
So question. If we're talking about, for example, if you go to a place where they have Shetland ponies,
Yes.
So there you can give the animal or put a feed bag on the animal because it's,
I think they can eat from the ground. I mean, they're fully grown. I mean, they, you know, it's just the shorter breed. I think they have shorter legs. But I haven't spent a lot of, well, I haven't spent any time raising horses from birth. So seemingly, when they're first born, it's difficult for them to actually eat from the ground. So if you had some type of animal, you know, I don't know if that's applicable to Shetland pony, but whatever it is, if you had some animal that it's always difficult to eat from the ground, I guess then the same thing would apply.
Okay.
Okay. Test Vol 15. In the hashlich tavula oifes makum lach. You can't throw grain for poultry in a wet, like in a damp place, right? Because it's possible, or it's likely, that some will stay there and it will sprout. So it's like you're sowing seeds on Shabbos. So you have to be careful what you throw to chickens and other animal birds on Shabbos. Okay. The sign 16. Right? You're giving feed to animals. You're not allowed to put it through a sieve. Right? They used to clean the chaff, get the chaff out and to cleanse it. You can't do that. But if that's not your intention, what do the kach say? Like, let's say, for example, you're using the sieve as like a scoop to take it to the trough. Then you're allowed to do that. But you can't do it in order to filter. Because that's one of the things that we can't do in Shabbos is separate the bad from the good. Okay. Yud Zayin 17. If you're feeding bran to your animals or chickens, you're not allowed to put water into it. Right? Here the concern is we're going to end up kneading it. It's going to make like a dough. But if you put water in the bran before Shabbos, also the gabler of Shabbos, you're not allowed to knead it on Shabbos. But you can't pour it from one vessel to another vessel. So the reason they would knead it is because they wanted to mix it. But so you can't do kneading. They can pour it from one utensil to another utensil backwards and forwards. Today she's ariv in order that it comes mixed together nicely. That you can do. Okay. Yidches number 18. Behemoths, chayes, oifus, agadelim, babayis. Now you have animals that are raised in the house. Right, so this is going to be relevant to people who have, pet dogs and cats and chickens and various things, or your parrots, animals that are raised in the house. So their food falls on you. In other words, they can't get food themselves. If you have a cow out in the pasture, so it'll eat the grass itself. It doesn't need you to feed it. Or if you have a pet lion, and it goes out in the jungle and feeds itself and comes back, whatever it is. But if you have animals that they're the house animals, and therefore, they can't get their own food. You're allowed to feed them on Shabbos. However, ones that aren't raised in a house, and they don't need you to get their food. Also, it's forbidden to trouble yourself, to exert yourself on Shabbos to give them food. So it might be more convenient for them to get the food from you. It could be you have nicer food or whatever it is, but you can't exert yourself to give them food unless they don't have another source of food. But feel the hashlich of name also, even just to throw it in their direction, not actually feed them is forbidden. And therefore, also the says mazonis that may yoinim. People who have doves, you can't feed them on Shabbos. If it's because they fly around, even though they're pet doves and they always come home and they sleep in the dove coats that you've made and they're pets. But nevertheless, since they're happy to fly around and get seeds and various things themselves, you can't feed them. Nice and mazonis no kelev, you can put food in front of a dog. But filo shel hefka, even a stray dog. So it's not your dog. It's a stray dog. As a matter of fact, it's a bit of a mitzvah to feed a stray dog. Right? So it showed because Kodesh Baruch Hu was Hashem has showed his compassion because it doesn't have a lot of food, and therefore Hashem caused that food stays in a dog's stomach for 3 days. So we see that Hashem, or at least some animals, Hashem has compassion. So we should be like Hashem, and if we see an animal that doesn't have food, we should also show compassion. Is someone ask something?
You just said that you can't feed animals on Shabbos, and here you say that you can give the dog food.
So an animal that's dependent on people for food, we're allowed to feed. So even a stray dog, if it's domestic breed, not talking about a wolf or a dingo or something, it's regular sort of breed. Look, it probably finds food around, but stray dogs, you see them; they're usually quite hungry. So you're allowed to put food in front of them.
What about your dog in your house? You can't put food in
Yeah, your dog you can, because your dog is dependent on you for food.
What?
So we said there's 2 different types of animals. There's the type of animal that's dependent on you for food, that you're allowed to feed it. As a matter of fact, you need to feed it. Sar balachaim. It's we have to avoid having an animal suffer. But an animal that doesn't depend on you. So let's say you have a cow that eats the grass on its own, doesn't need you. Or we gave the example about doves. If you don't put the grain in front of the doves, it'll fly off or find its own things. So those are the ones you can't feed. But an animal that's dependent on you, so most domesticated dogs, particularly in a city, they're not going to be able to get food anywhere else. You need to feed them on Shabbos.
Thank you.
Okay.
What about the human?
I mean, feeding humans?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, feeding humans is for sure no problem. Humans aren't muksa, while the animals are.
yeah, but it says here something about non-Jew that comes to eat.
Okay, that'll be the next halacha. We'll get there, and that's a separate issue.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, yesh nahagan l'seis chitin l'fnei oifes b'Shabbos shira. The people who have a custom that you put out some food for wild birds on Shabbos shira. We'll explain this in a moment. Ve'ena nachon, he said it's not correct to do it on Shabbos. Because the responsibility for the food is not on you. So just to explain the custom, the first Shabbos that the manna fell from heaven when the Jews were in the wilderness. So Hashem told Moshe on Friday to tell all the Jewish people to take double on Friday, because Shabbos, this manna is not going to come down. And the people listened. So there were some troublemakers, and they wanted to make Moshe look like a liar. And they collected huge amounts on Friday. And they put it out on Shabbos early in the morning. So when people will wake up, it'll look like the man fell. But their plans were thwarted because the birds came down and ate it. So when everyone got up, it was all gone. So because of that, when we read that on Parshas B'Shalach, the Torah reading of B'Shalach each year, as like a thanks to the birds, we put out some grain, something to eat. Many people put out buckwheat, kasha, they put it out. So that's what we do. So, but since wild birds, he said here you're not meant to do that. So you're meant to put out before Shabbos. Put out before Shabbos, no problem. What he said you shouldn't do is to put it out on Shabbos itself. The Shabbos itself, since they're wild birds and they're not dependent on you for food, you can't feed them. So that was that. Okay. Good test number 19. All right. You're allowed to invite to have a non-Jewish guest at a Shabbos meal. Now, why would you think you can't? We're going to explain. So let's explain back. Let's go one step. On Shabbos, we know that we can't cook. Right? So anything that we want hot, we have to put on the fire before Shabbos. So let's say even the next day, we might have a cholent or something. So we put it in a crock pot or something before Shabbos, and it cooks, and we've got hot food on Shabbos. But we did all the cooking and made it hot before Shabbos. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook. However, this leniency, or this that we're allowed to cook on Yom Tov, is only for a Jew, because a Jew needs to there's a mitzvah to have rejoice on the Yom Tov by eating the hot food. So it's called oichel nefesh. Right? So it's this idea. So we're allowed to do malachas, do these forbidden techniques that involve cooking. So we can shecht on Yom Tov. Most people don't today, but in olden days, we didn't have refrigeration. A second day Yom Tov, particularly was a Yom Tov that followed a Shabbos. To have fresh meat, you have to shecht on Yom Tov. So you can shecht, all these things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So you can shecht, you can salt the meat, you can cook it, you can skin it, all the different things you need to do. But this is all in order that a Jew can have a hot meal on Yom Tov. So a non-Jew, you can't cook for him on Yom Tov. So therefore, we can't invite a non-Jew to a Yom Tov meal, because there's a concern that we might cook extra. 4 people in our household and we're going to eat. So 4 pieces of chicken, but I've got my 3 guests coming. And so now I'm going to cook on Yom Tov 7 pieces of chicken. And this is going to be a problem, because the leniency to cook on Yom Tov is only to give a hot meal to a Jew. Shabbos, though, we're not concerned, because Shabbos you can't cook for anyone. Can't even cook for yourself. That's all we've done before Shabbos. So now with that background, you're allowed to invite a non-Jew to join you for a Shabbos meal. Even though you're not allowed to invite him for Yom Tov, because of the decree, you're going to cook more food and do more malachas for him. But on Shabbos, we don't have this concern. And even if you're only we're not worried if you're only feeding him. Even if you're not eating, you're just giving food to the non-Jews. No problem on Shabbos, because no one's cooking on Shabbos. Now, even though it's not your responsibility to feed him, right? A human being is able to acquire their own food. Nevertheless, since we want to, we feed, we have people for meals, to make peace between us and our neighbors. It's similar to his food being our responsibility. Yes, Ben.
The holidays that are not close to Shabbat, Are you allowed to have a goy on a holiday that's not
No,
close
so
to
any yontif, you can't have a non-Jewish guest on a yontif because of this decree.
no matter about so it's not
Yeah.
the issue of cooking.
Well, it's because of the cooking. We're worried that you're going to cook extra food. You know, if you've got extra people coming, you're going to make extra food on yontif.
Yeah, but if you cook before Yontif,
Well, maybe you cook before yontif, then you decide you need more, so you're going to make some more. That's the concern.
okay.
Yeah, Ezra.
Yeah, situation arises. I don't know whether it's a special situation or not. Sometimes we have family that require an aid, a non-Jewish aid. And, that also happens on Yom Tov.
Yeah.
So so you're saying that in this situation, we can't invite them?
Well, I'll tell you like this. And sometimes you also have families, some situations where, sometimes people intermarried. And, if you want to have all the Jews at the Seder, or whatever it is, the trade-off is you have to have the other person as well. So sometimes there's a lot of situations. So in a situation you're saying, so I don't know how many people there are. I'm just making up numbers. You end up 10 people plus one aide. So, the chance of making something extra, just be careful not to cook extra. Just chuck everything in and make sure, or at least not to make extra on Yom Tov. So there are a lot of situations where you may find yourself need to. So this is the general rule. I don't want to start saying you can start willy-nilly inviting whoever, whenever. So this is the general rule. We're not really meant to. There's going to be situations, like you say, where even if you don't invite them, this family, they also have to eat, even if they ate at home. So they're going to have the same situation. So we just have to really consciously make sure that we're not making anything extra on Yom Tov, that everything's made before Yom Tov. That's going to have to be the challenge. And there will be times, it happens.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you were saying about for a Jew, you can cook on Yontif. You should clarify it doesn't mean to cook from like to turn on the stove and turn on the fire on Yontif and cook. There's specific conditions.
Right. So you can only light fire from existing flame. Can't use the existing, but you could light a fire from. But also the actual cooking itself. But good point to raise, so we don't get anyone confused. Yeah. So all right. Let's squeeze in one more. Chaf number 20. You have animals that they don't come back to their cage at night. Right, so I have pet chickens, and the kids pet chickens. So every night, if you let them out to run around during the day, at night, they always come back.
There you are. Yeah. Hold on. Let me just. See me now? Hold on. Yes.
Right, so they always come back. They go back into their coop at night. The animals that don't do that, right? Even if they're trained to do so, right? They did do it. But now they're being naughty and they're not coming back. They're running away. Therefore, you can't close them up in their coop or cage or in the house, right? Because we're not allowed to trap animals on Shabbos. So an animal that goes into its coop on its own, you can close the door afterwards. It's trained, it goes back. Or you have a dog that comes in, and it has its place where it sleeps in the house. So you can close the door behind it. But if it doesn't, if it runs away, then you can't forcibly put in its coop or its cage or whatever it is on Shabbos, because that would be trapping an animal on Shabbos. Even if they happen to be in the house or in the cage. But the door currently is open. Also, there's Goro, you can't close the door on them. Because this is trapping them because they're running, the animals that run away currently. And, we can't trap animals on Shabbos. All right. Any questions on that? All right, very good. Well, I think we ran out of time. Hope I wasn't going too fast. I just thought that since a lot of the halachas weren't that relevant, we should cover it, but not spend a lot of time. Okay. All right. Wish everyone an incredible week.
Have a good Shabbos.
Wonderful
You
Shabbos.
too, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good Shabbos.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.